God answers the prayers of the saints. Now, you young people last evening were very, very energetic, lively. We hope that you are very alert this morning. We've got a challenge this morning, a particular challenge this morning and tomorrow morning, because as we enter the sixth seal, what we're going to do of necessity is we're going to couple Revelation 12 to the last 6 verses of Revelation 6. Many of us are aware of that, some not. So when you read the overview, if you like, of the sixth seal in Revelation 6, those 6 verses, to get the detail of this first great earthquake, you need to go to Revelation 12. And that's what we're going to do. This morning we're going to put our toe in Revelation 12, and tomorrow morning we're going to walk through Revelation 12 in a lot more detail, and to face the challenge that Revelation 12 offers us. Because what happens, of course, when you go into the 12th chapter, which is the sixth seal, one of the centerpieces of Revelation 12 is the great red dragon. But the challenge to that is that the great red dragon changes into a Christian dragon. So instead of having one dragon in chapter 12, you have 2. Another centerpiece in Revelation 12 is a woman. That's how the chapter opens. A woman clothed with the sun, moon under her feet, crown of 12 stars. But the challenge is that woman, that one woman that we're introduced to in the first part of chapter 12, splits off. And another woman, out of this woman, runs away and ends up into a wilderness state. So you've got 2 dragons, and at the moment, 2 women. But the woman that runs away from this woman and is caused to be in a wilderness state by this woman, that woman that runs away is in fact 2 women. So in Revelation 12, you have 2 dragons and 3 women. Now, to add to the challenge of Revelation chapter 12, not all the verses run chronologically. You might be reading one verse. Are you pointing at me, Andrew? Oh, thank you very much. The internet security is currently performing back. Well, that's very comforting to know that, isn't it? Well, okay. So thank you very much, brother, back there. No, I mean, that distracts you, but it doesn't distract me. The only thing that distracts me is brothers at the back waving their hands. But there you go. So we'll get rid of that. So to add to the compound of that challenge, brothers and sisters and young people, is that not all verses run chronologically in chapter 12. In fact, you'll get some verses whereby you'll read the first part of the verse, which in fact should be placed at the end of the verse, and the end part of the verse should be placed at the beginning of the verse. So my advice to you is tonight, let's have an early lights out, about 7:30. And for coffee or for breakfast tomorrow, have 3 cups of coffee and 10 sugars. Don't worry about the diabetes. Just make sure that you're alert for the study. So we have a challenge before us. Well, brothers and sisters and young people, what we've done thus far is we've been tracking through and seeing how that the bow benders were going to weaken and weaken and weaken with sending out the words of the covenant. They're going to weaken the pagan Roman Empire until it's rolled away in the 6th seal. So we had that 84 years of peace. We then had that 31 years of civil war with the Machaira. We then had 24 years of the Black Horse, the mourning and depression, heavy taxation. Remembering it was relieved at that end of the 24 years with Severus Alexander, that 17-year-old virtuous person in the sense that reducing taxation to 1/30th. And then we plummeted into this awful chloritic, pale yellowy, greeny horse, and there was death all around the empire. Half the empire perished. Now, we talked about in this second seal how that you could go to Rome on a given day and 2,000 would die that day. Well, in this period here, it wasn't 2,000 in Rome, it was 5. So you would go on a certain day and it would not be unusual to see 5,000 perish in a day, notwithstanding half the empire perished in the process. So we didn't have 5 emperors, we didn't have 5 emperors, we didn't have 4 emperors, we had 23 emperors. and those 39 would-bes who all died violently. Now we ended up with Diocletian. Diocletian being the last emperor of the fourth seal, and he would then transist into the fifth seal and be the first emperor of the fifth seal. Now, just to make sure we've got our dates right here, and a couple of people did ask me about some dates. Now, you see there, not so clear, but you see there is the fifth seal, 303 through to 311, 8 years of terrible persecution to our brothers and sisters, the souls under the altar that cried. However, when Diocletian bridges the fourth into the fifth seal, this is where you see Diocletian. He reigned for about 20 odd years, and he did not, when you come into the fifth seal here, he did not see all of those 8 years. Yes, he brought in the persecution, but a couple of years after the fifth seal began in 303, in 305, Diocletian got ill and he stepped down from the throne. So even though he comes in, he only comes in for 2 years in the fifth seal, and other emperors took over thereafter. Now Diocletian, just a couple of minutes, and we did finish our study yesterday on this note. With the fifth seal, now what we're going to do now is merge from the fifth seal and show you how the fifth seal merges in to the sixth seal and the great earthquake, and then coupling Revelation 12 with all of this. We finished our study yesterday. In the fifth seal, Diocletian reigning 2 years during this period. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O despotes?" You remember yesterday we said, of all the times the word Lord is used in the Apocalypse, all the time, this is the only place where despotes, calling God a despot. Why? Why here? Of all the places in the Apocalypse, why here call God a despot? There was a reason. And the reason, brothers and sisters and young people, was because that man there was also a despot. You've got two rivaling despots, God and Diocletian. Diocletian was the greatest despot that ever sat on the throne in Rome. Most of the emperors before Diocletian wore the coronal wreath. They wore the laurette. Not this man. He wore a diadem. And when he walked around his palace, he wore long flowing robes like a Persian king. And when he walked around his palace, he walked like he was gliding on ice. And people looked at him and said, is he Roman or is he a Persian king? And that's what he wanted to portray, the despotism of this man. And brothers and sisters, he, Diocletian, was not going to allow any thug with a sword to take him. He was, in fact, years gone by, a thug with a sword. He wasn't going to let any rich man come along and open up his wallet and say, I'm going to buy the empire, thank you very much. No. He wasn't going to let a mob storm his palace. And so what he did, he turned his palace into a city. And if you had audience with him, if you got to see him, you weren't allowed to do what previous emperors allowed you to do, to go down on your knee and to put your fist on your heart and put your head down and then look the emperor in the eye and then stand up and then step back. You weren't allowed to do that with this man. You had to come in, if you got audience with him, and you had to lay down and prostrate yourself flat on your face, which I'm not going to demonstrate, flat on your face 3 times. And then when you stood up, you were not allowed to look him in the eye. He was a despot. And therefore, the hubbub, the murmurings, the talk, the gossip out in the marketplaces, by the stalls, out in the provinces. Who is the true despot? The Lord God, holy and true, or Diocletian, unholy and untrue? And our brothers and sisters were crying to God. That's why it's there in that verse, for us to listen, to hear their witness. They were crying to God and saying, you only are our despot. We will not allow anyone with the power even that man has. We won't allow him to rob our hearts. We won't allow him to take our minds. We won't allow him to take our life. You only are we dedicated to. That's why that little verse is put in there, to show the challenge that faced our brothers and sisters. You, not the world, you are the one that has our heart, has our mind, and has our life. What a wonderful thing, brothers and sisters, that was. And there was the fifth seal. And they cried to despotes, "How long, O despotes? How long before men like that will be taken from this earth?" And we cry the same. We're waiting for all of these despots in the world to be taken away and honour to be given to the true despot in heaven. So they ask the question, how long? And that question is going to be answered now as we transist from the fifth into the sixth seal. Now, what I want to do for a couple of minutes, because I know you're all fresh, don't get tired, just get tired through Brother Jim's class, okay? I'm sorry, Brother Jim, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that, not at all. Or did I? I'm not so sure. Okay, so brothers and sisters, what I want to do, young people, I just want to transist you through from the fifth seal into the sixth seal, showing you how the angels were guiding the empress and guiding the empire itself. Now, we knew, now there's Diocletian there, just before he gets sick and stands down. Now, we knew that Diocletian divided his empire for ease of administration into a tetrarchy. An Augustus in the east and an Augustus in the west and a junior Caesar. And so, well, there it is. There's the tetrarchy. So Diocletian's there. He's the Augusti, and Maximian, he's the Augusti in the west. And you've got Constantius, who's the junior Caesar over in the west. And Constantius, of course, was Constantine's father. And you have this fellow named Galerius. He was the one that was goading Diocletian during the fifth seal. It's the Christians, kill the Christians and you'll get rid of the crisis. Galerius was the one that was pushing Diocletian, who did not want to persecute them because he knew that they would become more potent bow benders. But there's Galerius, not a very nice person. So, an Augusti, a junior Caesar and a junior Caesar. Well, Diocletian abdicates. And then the empire tumbles into crisis. You've got Maximian, who is the Augusti in the west, and Galerius picks up the baton from Diocletian and becomes the Augusti in the east. And then you had a usurper come on the scene, Maxentius. Comes into Rome, he's a usurper, but he promises the Christians great relief. He weeds his way into Rome. He's going to be dealing with Constantine or vice versa. And then you have another person come on the scene, Licinius, who would become Constantine's brother-in-law. He would marry Constantine's sister. And then you have another fellow down here who was a terrible pagan. His name was Maximin, not to be confused with the 8.5-foot Thracian peasant running around, soon to be emperor. So there you have now, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's still in the background, just controlling the puppet strings. But you've got 6 emperors. We've got to get down to 3, because Revelation 12 demands it. God demands it. The angels are going to make sure it happens. We've got to go from 6 down to 3. Why? Well, of course, in Revelation 12, we read things like, and the dragon drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven. Drew the 3rd part. We haven't got 3 parts here yet. So, what happens now, brothers and sisters and young people? Maximian stands down from the throne, and now you've got Constantius taking the role of the Augusti in the east, Constantine's father. But then Constantius dies, and the men over in York, in England, all rally around Constantine enthusiastically, and they elect Constantine as the emperor. That very much agitated Galerius. They did not follow the men over here Roman protocol. He's an Augusti. You fellas over there are just soldiers. You just can't do that. You've got to get permission from the Augusti as to who's going to take Constantius's place, not his son. And that really, really agitated Galerius, because Constantine was pro-Christian. He wanted to put somebody in that was a pagan through and through. So the intense agitation gathers momentum in the Roman Empire. Well, Constantine now realises that unless he deals with Maxentius in Rome, then Constantine's life and position are in peril. So Constantine now needs to move down before Maxentius moves up. And down he comes with his soldiers after Galerius dies. So down Constantine comes. And it's about now to face and fight the greatest battle of his life. And some of you know that that battle took place about 14 kilometres out of Rome at Milvian Bridge. Now, the story goes, I think many of us are aware of the story, that when Constantine got to Milvian Bridge, he claims to have had a vision. He claims to have seen the sun and a cross superimposed on the sun and heard a voice say to Constantine, "In this sign, conquer." What did Constantine do? He's outside, 14 kilometres or so from Rome. He's going to kick out Maxentius, hopefully, the pagan emperor, and position himself in Rome. He gets this sign. In this sign, conquer. And immediately, brothers and sisters and young people, he gets his soldiers to paint on their shields this sign. There is the name Christos, Christ in Greek. There is Chi Rho, the first two letters of the name of Christ, XP, Chi or Chi Rho. There is the banner under which the labyrinth, the military standard under which Rome would march with Constantine. XP, Chi Rho, the first two letters of the Lord Jesus Christ's name. And with that, he marched in to Rome and defeated the pagan emperor Maxentius. Constantine now, in 312, is the ruler of the West. We now, brothers and sisters and young people, are going to hear the answer to the cry of our brothers and sisters, "O despotes, how long before the pagan world is removed?" Well, God is setting the scene for the war in heaven and a dragon and a man-child. We've now got 3 emperors and 3 thirds. And we're going to see tomorrow, God willing, we're going to see how this and other quotations are going to now be fulfilled, God having set the scene. And the cry that went up by our brothers and sisters, how long, was now going to be answered 1 year after Constantine came in to Milvian Bridge. The Edict of Milan, religious toleration. Constantine got together with his brother-in-law Licinius. They drafted up this Edict of Milan and said, now you can worship whatever deity you like. Do you know, if you go on the internet and you Google this, I'm not saying that Google is always 100% accurate, which is a surprise, isn't it? But if you go onto Google and you Google this Edict of Milan, do you know what people are saying? They're saying, oh, look at that man Constantine. What a forward thinker he was. Look at that, allowing religious toleration, allowing you to worship whatever deity you like. How great a thinker he was. That's the sort of thing that we love to hear in this age that we live in. That's what they say. Don't let anyone tell you you must be restricted in this path. You do what you like and worship who you like. And they're using that example to justify their mindset with a humanistic mindset today. Well, brothers and sisters and young people, there was the scene that would be set with respect to the 3 portions of the empire and the answer to our brothers and sisters. How long? God says you don't have to wait long. The 6th seal is now about to burst on the scene. So, brothers and sisters, the 6th seal, the great earthquake. Now, Constantine comes in 312, just after the end of the 5th seal. Now, the 6th seal, or the great earthquake, paganism cast out, which we'll look at in Revelation 12, happened, of course, in 324. So this intervening period between Constantine becoming the sole or the ruler of the West in 312 through to 324, the intervening 12-year period is captured for us in detail in Revelation 12. So from 312 to 324, when paganism was finally defeated, there's all these wars and battles, wars and battles, wars and battles, until finally, from 312 to 324, till finally the end of paganism was realised in the world. So that's how it works. All right, enter the sixth seal. So we're reading Revelation chapter 6 and picking up the words in verse 12. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, the moon became as blood, the stars of heaven fell to the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. And if you think you are rock solid and immovable as a person in this world, think again. Every mountain will be removed. If you think that you were distant from this place, then think again, because God is going to remove you like an island. Every person, no matter how close or distant, every person, no matter how big or small, solid or unsolid, God was going to totally upturn the pagan Roman world. Now, brothers and sisters, young people, a great earthquake. I think most of us in this audience would know that there are no literal earthquakes in the book of Revelation. No literal earthquakes in the book of Revelation. They are symbolic. And there are three of them. Three great earthquakes in the apocalypse. This is a people shape. Now, where in the Bible would you go to prove to someone that the earth speaks of people? Anyone think of any quotations? In the Old Testament? Excellent. Isaiah 1. Hear ye, O heavens, hear ye, O earth. And then it goes on further. Well, let's have a look at that. I think we've got that one under there. Isaiah 1 verse 2 and then verse 10. Ye rulers of Sodom and you people of Gomorrah, or is it the other way around? You rulers of Gomorrah and you people of Sodom? I think it's you rulers of Sodom and you rulers of Gomorrah. So the people are the earth in Isaiah. Let's quickly turn that one up, just in case our young ones haven't seen that one. And then I want to take you to another quotation with a little warning attached to it. So Isaiah chapter 1, where earth is referenced as people, very familiar to many. Verse 2. So hear ye, O heavens, give ye ear, O earth. Now the interpretation and the answer, of course, is in verse 10. Here are the heavens and here are the earth. So verse 10, hear ye the word of Yahweh, ye rulers, you heaven of Sodom, out of verse 2, and you people of Gomorrah. So you've got heavens and earth, people and rulers. Now we won't look at Deuteronomy 32 and verse 1, that's an excellent one. If you go to Deuteronomy 32 and you're taking notes in verse 1, then scan back to Deuteronomy 31 and a couple of verses as they lead in to Deuteronomy 32. Very easily for the context to pick that up. Now, brothers and sisters, I want to say this. Some people, including Christadelphians, sad, true, but sad. Some look at this earthquake and they look at Revelation chapter 12 and they go, fig tree. Heavens departing. This is Israel. The beast is Israel. Brothers and sisters, this is a very excellent quotation to jot next to this verse in Revelation 6. And the heaven departed as a scroll. This is the political heaven of Rome. But some say, no, this is about Israel. If you were to go back, which we won't, if you were to go back to Isaiah 34 and verse 4 and 5, there is stock and rock solid proof that there is the same expression, the heaven departed as a scroll, and it's not talking about the nation of Israel, and it's in the context of figs. So just make a note of that one. If anyone says to you, fig tree, this is Israel. No, go to Isaiah 34 and verses 4 and 5, and it's talking about Edom. And God's going to bring a sword to the heaven, to Edom, not Israel. So just because it mentions fig tree, don't just say, got to be locked into Israel. Isaiah 34 and verses 4 and 5 say the opposite. All right, I just wanted to say that by the way. Now, brothers and sisters, as far as this great earthquake is concerned, there are three of them in the apocalypse. I think many of you in this room know where the three are. But there are two other places where earthquakes are mentioned. Our young people will be onto this because we've been working through these with them. Just let me have you from the audience. The first great earthquake is here. Where's the second great earthquake in the apocalypse? Just shout it out. What chapter? Chapter? Very good. Thanks, Brother Jim. Surprise, surprise. Revelation chapter 11. Yes, the great earthquake. The second great earthquake is in Revelation chapter 11. Where's the third great earthquake? 16. Very good. Chapter 16. Fantastic. So here they are. Here are the three great earthquakes in the apocalypse. Isn't it interesting? They all position at the end of their respective six. The sixth seal, the sixth trumpet, and the sixth vial. Now you notice there, this is paganism removed. And there are only three great earthquakes in the apocalypse, only three. This is the French Revolution, the removal of the French aristocracy and the Catholic hierarchy. And here we've got the third great earthquake. Now you see there's the word Armageddon there, but that's not accurate, brothers and sisters, because Armageddon is the last event of the sixth vial. The third great earthquake is the seventh vial. It's a political shaking of the kingdom of men in that period between Armageddon and the beginning of the millennium. So, three great symbolic or political earthquakes. Now, you will come across, there they are there are the quotations. Chapter 6 verse 12, chapter 11 verse 13, and chapter 16 verse 18. You'll come across two other places where the earthquake is mentioned. Just want to tap into that one so we don't stumble over this. So I'll just get you to have a look at very quickly. Let's go first of all to Revelation 11 and verse 19. Just make sure that we don't get confused about these other two earthquakes. There's only three ones that are mentioned as being great. But you don't see the word great attached to chapter 11 and verse 19, nor chapter 8 verse 5. So what are they? Well, in Revelation chapter 11, we have in verse 14, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Now, young people know this upside down, inside out, and back to front. The second woe is past. Woe, the woe trumpets, woe trumpet 1, woe trumpet 2, and woe trumpet 3. There are your four wind trumpets, the Germanic barbarians. So woe trumpet 1 is the fifth trumpet, woe trumpet 2 is the sixth trumpet, and woe trumpet 3 is the seventh. Now the record says there, the second woe is past, the sixth trumpet, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And this woe trumpet, the seventh trumpet, contains our vials and our thunder judgments. So it says the third woe cometh quickly. Now what you get then, brothers and sisters and young people, you get from verse 15 through to verse 19 an overview of the seventh trumpet, leading us to the kingdom. An overview. And in this overview you get verse 19. The chapter finishes with the temple, like chapter 11 begins with the temple. Here we are, the temple, the brothers and sisters, the immortalised saints, and the temple of God was opened in the political heavens of the world in the age to come, and there was seen in the temple the ark of the covenant, and there were voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. Doesn't say great earthquake. This locks us into Revelation 16. So this earthquake there, of course, the context demands that. So this earthquake in Revelation 11 is the third great earthquake spoken of in Revelation 16. They are locked together, cross-referenced together. All right, that's the easy one. Let's just now quickly just have a look at Revelation 8, which is the only other occasion where the word earthquake occurs. Revelation 8 and verse 5. Only three great earthquakes, but two other places where the word is mentioned without the word great next to it. Making sure we decipher these two. So Revelation 8 and verse 5. Well, you know Revelation 8 and verse 1, brothers and sisters. Some of you may know this, some of you may not. The opening of the seventh seal. Verse 1, Revelation 8. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in the political heavens of Rome. More about that tomorrow. That verse is Constantine, who is now the sole ruler of the Roman world. Verse 1 is AD 324. He's now got the West, and he's beaten the two other emperors over in the East, which we'll talk about later. So when you read verse 1 of chapter 8, it's AD 324. Constantine is ruling as the sole emperor over the now Christian world. So there's silence, there's tranquility in his Christian world. But that tranquility doesn't last long, because Constantine, 14 years later, dies. And here he is, he dies in verse 5 of Revelation 8. And this is where you pick up the earthquake. And the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire from the altar, we'll talk about more of that tomorrow, and cast it to the earth. And there were, now be very careful, brothers and sisters and young people, and cast it to the earth, and there were voices and thunderings and lightnings. Stop. There were voices, thunderings and lightnings. AD 337, Constantine's dead. Verse 1, he's ruling the West and the East, and it's 324. You come to verse 5 here, it's 337, Constantine's dead, and there were voices and there were thunderings and there were lightnings, and his sons were bickering with each other, trying to carve up the empire. There was chaos, and there were bishops over in Alexandria, and bishops over in Antioch, and bishops over in Rome, all arguing and bickering. Who is Jesus Christ? Is he a man? Is he a God? All this stuff was going on in the empire. There was voices and thunderings and lightnings in the Christian world. And then, it says in verse 5, there was an earthquake. Now that date is 361. Constantine's nephew, Julian, the apostate, says, have a look at the Christian world. Bishops arguing with one another, sons of Constantine trying to divide them. This is ridiculous. If this is Christianity, it's finished. And so Julian comes in, casts out Christianity, and brings back paganism for 2 years. So there was a little shake, a little earthquake. So don't stumble over that verse. So when there's thunderings and voices and lightnings, Constantine's dead, 337, and a few years later in 361, Julian comes on the throne and says, out goes Christianity, in comes paganism. Lasted 2 years, Christianity came back. So just as a little note, looking through those 5 occurrences of the word earthquake in the apocalypse, brothers and sisters. All right. I won't go through that because Brad's looking at me and saying time's running away. Were you looking at me, brother? I felt the eyes boring into my right arm. Now, brothers and sisters, justification, and young people, justification now for matching and preparing ourselves to enter into Revelation 12, coupling that with the last 6 verses of Revelation 6. Justification for that is this. I want to show you the similarity of language in chapter 6, the 6th seal, the first great earthquake, and the similarity of language in chapter 12 that gives us justification to draw both together. Now what you'll find in Revelation 6 and verses 12 through 17, there was a great earthquake. Verse 12. When you come to Revelation 12 and verse 7, paganism is cast out. The dragon is cast out. And Michael, Constantine, he, like God, casts out the pagan dragon. So it's called a great earthquake in verse 12 of chapter 6. It's called the casting out of the dragon from heaven in Revelation chapter 12. Then when you look at this comparison, in Revelation 6 and verse 13, the stars of heaven fell to the earth. In Revelation 12 and verse 4, the dragon drew whoever the dragon was, we'll look at that tomorrow, the dragon drew the third part of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. So you see this language of stars falling, both in chapter 6 and in chapter 12. We also have in verse 12 of chapter 6, the sun became black and the moon turned to blood. But in Revelation 12, the sun's back. It's glowing brightly. The woman now is clothed with the sun. No longer is it black, and the moon is under her feet. No more is it covered in blood. So you've got this similarity of language allowing us to merge these 2 chapters together. And then you have these interesting comments in verse 16 of chapter 6. The pagans, the dragon followers. When Constantine comes on the scene with a key row the first two letters of the name Christ on the shields and marching under the banner of Christ. In this sign conquer, as he said he heard. When the pagans see this great army with Christ in the front of the shields, as it were, the pagans are going, fall on us, hide us, they say to the mountains, from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne, Constantine, and from the wrath of the Lamb whom they believed he was representing. But then in verse 10 and 11 of chapter 12, these are the Christians. These are the fellow servants. These are the ones God prepared, the sanctified ones, in that fifth seal. They say, and they overcame him, overcame the dragon, they say, by the blood of the Lamb. So pagans speaking here and Christians speaking there, but it's in the same context of the dragon being cast out of heaven. All right, here's chapter 12. How are we going there with the time? We are going. It's only 9:45. We're going to finish so early. This is fantastic. Are you allowed to finish early, Brother Andrew? Fantastic. Well, that's good. We're going very well. Now here is, I've already built up credits in my studies. I've already got 5 minutes in my pocket. You don't get them. Okay. All right, brothers and sisters, young people. Now we enter into Revelation chapter 12, the first great earthquake and the sixth seal. Now, the main thrust of Revelation 12, you won't see that text from there, but you're going to see the colours and what we're going to do with this particular chapter. What we've got here, brothers and sisters, is we've got the main thrust of the chapter, one of the centrepieces of this chapter. In verse 7, words that we are very familiar with, many of us, there was war in heaven, in the political heavens of Rome. This is a war for Rome. Michael, which we'll prove in our study tomorrow, is Constantine. Michael and his army. And among the army of Constantine, the angels, among the army would have been the fellow servants, not the brethren, the fellows, the primitive Catholics marching off to war with Constantine, which the brothers couldn't do. So there was war in heaven. Michael and his army fought against. Now I'm going to say this, and we'll prove this tomorrow, fought against Licinius, Constantine's brother-in-law. I'm going to prove to you that tomorrow. This is Licinius, his brother-in-law. And this great battle between Constantine and Licinius. And the dragon, Licinius, fought with his army, and the great dragon, Licinius, was cast out, that old serpent. And we'll look at that tomorrow as well, why those titles are given. So this is a war for Rome. Now, brothers and sisters, we've got the pagan dragon, young people, in Revelation chapter 12. I don't know whether you've done this little exercise, but it's very important to have some sort of colouring scheme in this chapter, because as we said before, we have 2 dragons and 3 women. So to make sense of this chapter, you've got to know which dragon is which, and you've got to make sense of which woman is which. So we need to understand how the dragon changes, why the dragon changes, when the dragon changes in this chapter, because the dragon does change. So there you have the pagan dragon in red, and then you have the Christian dragon, Constantine. After having beaten pagan Rome, defeated it, Constantine then himself and his sons thereafter, and the emperors thereafter ruling from Constantinople, become the Christian dragon. Let's just go back there for a minute. This is the pagan dragon, the great red dragon. This is paganism. And Constantine is going to fight it. Now I've popped Galerius, Maxentius and Licinius in the mouth of this pagan dragon. I'm going to show you later how Galerius played his part, ready to devour the child before it was born. How Maxentius played his part, ready to devour the child, the man-child, Constantine, as soon as he was born. And Licinius certainly plays a part in this. There's the dragon and there's the woman about to give birth to a child. I want to show how those 3 emperors played a part in trying to kill this child before he was born, before he was politically born in the economy of Rome. Now, I'll give you a minute, brothers and sisters, or young people. Some of you are colouring that away. Can you see that from back there? Is that easy to see? I don't need to expand that. It's showing off. If you can see it from back there, it means your eyes are very good. I just wanted to show you that I'm kind of like tech savvy. Is that amazing? You know, I learned how to do that, and then I didn't know how to get it back again. So, but now I've learned. So I'll just give you a minute, like it's, yes, why not? Just take a minute. If you haven't coloured that in and you've got a red pencil, I don't demand that you do it, but if you don't, I'm going to speak 15 minutes over time. No, I'm not. Okay, here you go, see that? We'll go back. All right, if you can all see that, yeah, I think, brothers and sisters, just take a minute. It's worth taking the minute, because if you don't do it now, you may not do it at all. And it's going to be very, very helpful as we go through Revelation chapter 12. Don't feel embarrassed if you're not doing it. People won't be looking at you from the side. It's just 30 seconds if you want to just get that, rather than me racing ahead. So what have we got? We've got, you know, the great dragon, he, his in verse 9, him, the accuser in verse 10, the devil in verse 12. And then we've got he in verse 12, the dragon, verse 13, and he. All of this is pagan Rome. This is the great red dragon, and an appropriate colour, of course, to colour it in is red. All right, another 10 seconds. All right. Now, when you come to the dragon changing, which we will look at in detail tomorrow, Constantine, after having defeated pagan Rome, defeated his brother-in-law Licinius, he now becomes the Michael, the man-child. He now becomes the serpent, the dragon. He is a Christian adversary, a Christian dragon to the brothers and sisters. Some of you might be looking at that and going, okay, I can see that in Revelation 12, but what is going on here? How come the dragon, the Christian dragon, spills down here into chapter 13? Well, the reason it spills down into chapter 13, brothers and sisters, some of you will know this verse, the dragon gave power and his seat and his authority in Revelation 13 to the beast. So the military rulers, the Christian emperors in Constantinople, Constantine's sons, and thereafter, you know, your Justinians and your all the other emperors in Constantinople, they became the Christian dragon in Constantinople. So this, in chapter 13, is referring to those Christian Catholic emperors ruling from Constantinople and then giving power to the bishop in Rome. That's why it spills down into Revelation 13. Christian dragon is still there in those centuries to follow. All right, we'll move on from that, brothers and sisters. And here's a question. How do we know, how can we prove that this dragon, be it pagan or be it Christian, in this sixth seal, this war in heaven, this great earthquake, how can we prove that that's Rome? If somebody came up to you and said, surely not, how would you prove it? Where would you go? What chapter of the Bible would you turn up to prove this is Rome? Nobody's listening to me, they're all colouring in. No problems at all. Brothers and sisters, would you not, you know, some of you might go back to Daniel 7. That kind of helps us a little bit, but not the way we need to be helped. Here we've got a dragon, pagan and Christian, with 7 heads, 10 horns. Where would you go? Absolutely. Thank you very much. Revelation 17. This is an amazing chapter and an amazing verse to really prove that the dragon in Revelation 12 is in fact Rome. Oh, we know in Revelation 17 that the woman that sat on the beast was that great city that reigns over the kings of the earth. We know that. But when you come to Revelation 17, this is the simple bit. We know this. The 7 heads. So let's have a look at Revelation 17 first, brothers and sisters. And I love doing this with young people. I love going to young people and saying, now I want you to come here and I want you to read this verse. So we go to Revelation 17 and we read this verse, or these verses, in Revelation 17, and verse 9. Here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Okay, we're given a geographic location of this dragon. And there are 7 forms of government. 5 are fallen, one is yet to come. When he comes, he must continue a short space. The one that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. So what I get young people to do is I get them to say that over and over again. 5 are fallen, one is yet to come. When he comes, he must continue a short space. The one that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And when they say that, like that, I go, now did you understand that? And they go, no way did I understand that. We need to understand that so simply with a little diagram. But the first thing we're given is the 7 heads are 7 mountains. Well, there are other cities that sit among 7 hills. So this doesn't really rock solid it for me. So we've got this. Well, here's a coin in the British Museum. This would have been around. This was minted in 71 AD during the reign of Vespasian. So people would have been familiar with this symbol of Rome as a woman sitting among 7 hills. That's pretty straightforward. But the real cementing of the proof is, and there are 7 kings, 7 forms of government. 5 are fallen, one is, and the other is not yet come. Now, the 5 forms of government that had fallen, here's John in AD 96. He's writing this, and he's saying, rightio, the 7 heads, John, you didn't understand it before, the 7 heads are 7 forms of government. Okay, 5 forms of government are fallen. Now, John would have known those 5 forms of government with respect to Rome. In 700 BC, Rome was ruled over by a king. They had a regal form of government, 700 BC. 200 years later, in 500 BC, Rome became a republic. And Rome, therefore, during the republic period, was ruled over by consular, dictatorial, decemviral and tribunitial forms of government. Now, with the consular form of government, they had 2 consuls that ruled. The Senate was there in an advisory capacity with respect to legislative matters. The people had a say through the Senate, but there were 2 consuls that ruled as a form of government. The trouble was, brothers and sisters, they had in Rome these agitations of society. And they had the patricians, which were the upper class, and the plebeians, which were the lower class. And they were constantly infighting. The patricians, upper class, the plebeians, lower class. So here are these 2 consuls ruling, and you've got these agitation issues going on in Rome. We've got to sort it out. And every now and then, when Rome had problems on their border, or they had problems internally, they brought in a dictator to sort it out. So they had a dictatorial form of government. But they still had these problems going on in Rome between the upper class and the lower class. So what they did on one occasion, they said, we need to go to Greece and find out how they set up their ruling system. So they came back with 10 laws. 10. Decemviral. Well, this problem between the plebeians and the patricians kept going on. And in the end, the plebeians, the underclass, kept pushing their tribunes forward to be elected. And the tribunes, in some instances, won the elections, and you had tribunitial. So we had kings, 2 consuls, dictators when they needed it, the rule of 10 from Greece, and tribunes ruling when the requirement came along. So those 5 forms of government did exist. What an amazing thing. History showing how accurate Bible prophecy is. One is, John, you're alive. We have emperors now. Imperial. Okay, I get that. The other one's not yet come. There's going to come another rule in Rome, and they're going to be the Goths. The Goths? They're not Roman? Oh, yeah. The Goths came in as barbarians, but they were Roman, like they were Roman as Roman. The Goths loved the Roman ways. They dressed up in all the regalia. They loved the Roman ways. And in came the Goths in Rome and ruled for a period of 60 years. The other is not yet come. So that's how it lays out in that verse. Then, brothers and sisters, when the Goths come, they will come and continue a short space. Now, that's the easy bit in Revelation 17. That's the easy bit. The tricky bit is, and the one that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7 and goeth into perdition. That's not the easy bit, but it is. Have a look how easy it is. John, there are 7 forms of government. 5 are fallen. Don't count that one through there as an extra one. 5 are fallen. One is, there's John, one is the imperial system. The other one, the Goths, have not yet come. And when they do come, they'll only be there for a short space. Now let's pause. You all got that? Easy as. John, now come over here to where the Goths are. John, look back. When he comes, he must continue a short space. Okay, John, look back. The one that was and is not, because you're here, even he is the 8th and goeth into perdition. So there's a resurrection of one of those 7. The one that was and is not, because you're here, John, even he is the 8th and is one of the 7. So the imperial form of government in Rome was coming back way into the future in 800 AD. What an amazing thing. And just to really do a little cross-reference here, brothers and sisters, just have a look at Revelation 13 and verse 3. Revelation 13 and verse 3 is exactly what Revelation 17 and verse 10 is saying here. One of those forms of government, one of those heads is coming back. Well, that's what it says in Revelation and chapter 13 and verse 3. Here's a 7-headed dragon. Here's a 7-headed beast. It's the same beast, but in a different stage of its development. And here we are in Revelation 13 and verse 3. And I saw one of the 7 heads, that's what we talk about, was as it were wounded to death, but the deadly wound was healed. So out of Revelation 13, here we are in Revelation 17, one of the heads was wounded to death, but the deadly wound was healed, and he became the 8th head. How simple is that? So when you see those verses, there are 7 heads, they represent 7 forms of government. 5 are fallen, one is yet to come. When he comes, he must continue a short space. The one that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. When you first read that, it seems like a quadratic equation. But when you look at it, you go, oh, what an amazing thing. What an amazing thing the Bible is. Well, brothers and sisters, this is an amazing thing because Rome is proven unequivocally in Revelation 12 to be the dragon, the 7-headed dragon. And the amazing thing is, I have finished. I don't know why I have finished so early, but I'm quite happy. Tomorrow, God willing, because we've got a picnic, tomorrow, God willing, brothers and sisters, we're going to pick up Revelation chapter 12 and we're going to have a look at the 3 women in comparison to the 2 dragons, and we're going to see how one woman peels off from another, and the one that peels off and is exiled and placed in a wilderness state, she in fact is made up of 2. And we're going to see how amazing verses tumble out of Revelation chapter 12 in this 6th seal and the 3rd great earthquake, and take out of that some wonderful exhortational comments. Thank you, brothers and sisters and young people.